So the OxyPathor was one of a group of blood oxygenating devices that cured all diseases. And I presented this previously I think I started presenting it in maybe about 2015. So it's going to be like 10 years. And there's some of the groups that I presented it for. And I'm going to be presenting it at the bottom. My class, undergraduate class, holds a monthly meeting. So it's going to be non-philatelists. And I thought this is a presentation they might enjoy too. So I'll try it with them. So just a little background on the world postal system to bring everybody to the same page. In 1900, the world postal system was efficient, reliable, and inexpensive. And for the first time, it offered the opportunity of mail order fraud on an international scale. And these are the four fraudsters that I've been collecting for quite a while now. I've talked about Professor Segno, who sold success waves. I did a presentation on the New York Institute of Science, emphasizing the ephemera. Told you a little about Dr. James W. Peebles and his partner, W. Thompson Bobo, and the Peebles Institute of Health. And today I'm going to do Elvard Moses and the OxyPathor Corporation. The requirements to get into my collection, I've put a tight box around it, otherwise it would be endless. Each of the participants has to have defined a clever scheme to defraud the public on an international scale. I'm not interested in local stuff, everyday stuff like patent medicines. They all have to have operated mainly from the United States, an erudite company, used the international mails and media to advertise and market their schemes, and of course left a strong philatelic record of their success, and to square up the rectangle around it, challenged by the U.S. Post Office and other public-minded systems, public-minded organizations regarding mail order fraud. So what happened? How I came across this? I was a regular at the Boxborough show in May, early May of every year in Boxborough, Massachusetts. I heartily recommend the show. And
It's a good one.
one of the dealers there, Bezko, I can't remember the proprietor's name. It's on a slide later on. But anyway, he knew I was interested in mail order fraud, and he was looking for Segno covers and New York Institute of Science covers for me. And he said to me as I sat down, Ed, I found these four covers to the OxyPathor company. This might be right up your alley. I don't know. And so he showed me the covers, and I had my computer with me, so I fired it up and I Googled the OxyPathor company, and so started a new addition to my collection, the OxyPathor company. The idea of a blood oxygenating device to cure all diseases began in the US in the 1890s. The first device was brought to market by a fellow named Hercules Sanche, who was a Cuban expatriate. During the mid-1890s, he began marketing a device called the Oxydonor. And at the left, you have a picture of Sanche from one of his advertising books. And at the right, you have the Oxydonor as is part of my collection. And you can see it consisted of a cylinder that was filled with chemicals, wire coming out of it that was hooked to an electrode that fitted either around your wrist or your ankle. And it presumably polarized your skin, which permitted the ready entry of oxygen into the blood, and that cured virtually every disease. Sancho was also a Cuban patriot, an immigrant from Cuba, and he and a fellow named Dressler wrote a patriotic song highlighting Cuba freedom called Cuba Free. It's available on eBay, but the owner wants, this is the sheet music, the owner wants $100 for it, and that's a little too expensive for me. Here's one of Sancho's advertisements for the Oxydonor. It stimulated the mind, it caused sound sleep, increased vitality, gives good appetite, and cures just some of the diseases: nervous prostration, insomnia, rheumatism, sciatica, debility, la grippe, pneumonia, etc., etc., etc. And you can see at the bottom, Sanche had offices in New York, Detroit, Chicago, and Montreal. And in the center, you see how the Oxydonor, he called it the Oxydonor Victory, was used. Uh, the metal cylinder was in a bowl of water. You see the electrode attached to an ankle. Interestingly, the thesis was the colder the unit, the more effective the treatment. And this is contrary to chemistry. I was a chemist in my day, and normally when you heat up reactions, they go faster. Okay, but with the oxygenating devices, they worked better in ice water temperatures. And here's the advertising booklet that Sanche sent around to people who wrote for information. And you can see at the top left, there are even more diseases that can be treated with this device. Sanche did not sell his incoming mail to the trade, so it's just by chance that you find covers. And this is the only one I've ever seen from the Oxydonor company. It's from Sanche's New York office at the 2-cent rate. Nothing special, except it's the only one from him, and that's it. Oh, Sancho was charged with mail order fraud. If you go to the post office documents, and you can see in 1908 he was charged, but they never entered anything on what the results of the charge were, if there were any. With Professor Segno, I showed a slide showing a similar docketing of his fraud case, where they actually decided they could not do anything against him because you couldn't capture a success wave and show that it didn't do anything. So what about the OxyPathor company? It was incorporated in New York in 1906 under the name the Oxygenator Company, which was changed to the OxyPathor Company in 1911. What had happened is others were appropriating the ideas of Sanche and developing their own oxygenator schemes. The founder of the OxyPathor was Elvard L. Moses, who capitalized on Sanche's idea, and he was enough of a businessman and a marketeer that he became very, very, very successful at this endeavor. The OxyPathor headquarters were in Buffalo, New York, with franchise offices around the United States and around the world. That was a key thing that Moses did, was establish these franchises. He was put out of business by the U.S. Post Office and the American Medical Association in 1914 for fraudulent use of the mails. And just a close-up of Mr. Moses. That doesn't look as elegant as some of the other fraudsters. Looks more like a country boy. So what was the OxyPathor? It was a blood oxygenating device. Again, it consisted of a cylinder filled with common chemicals, lengths of wire from each end, straps and contact electrodes for a wrist and an ankle. It polarized the skin and permitted ready entry of oxygen into the blood. Moses claimed that high levels of blood oxygenation cured virtually every disease. In fact, this device did nothing. During the court case in 1914, they cut one open and analyzed it, and you can see it was mostly sulfur with a good bit of sand, a little bit of lead carbonate. I don't know if that was coming from a lead pipe. That was the basis of the device, and there was a little moisture. And that was about it, traces of brass and iron. Nothing in there that would promulgate any chemistry that would do you any good. There's an OxyPathor lapel pin button that's part of the ephemera. You can buy OxyPathors on eBay till today. They generally run between $50 and $150. The cost to produce one in 1910 was $1.25. The cost to the customer was $35. And that's about $700 in today's purchasing power. So it was a pretty expensive device. According to the court records, the units sold between '09 and 14 was about 45,500. And that's over $1.5 million in sales, which is equivalent to $31 million in today's purchasing power. The chemical contents varied over the years, and I have 4 different oxygenating devices as part of my ephemera collection in this area. Here's the instruction booklet, 1911, 128 pages, loads of medical attachments available for every human orifice and surface. All right, think about that, every human orifice and surface. Hundreds of diseases listed for treatment. The booklet, the instruction booklet, was available in all the major European languages, including Japanese. I call this condition, the cover is damaged a little bit. The booklet that I bought had never been opened. So following the stamp, the way we describe stamps, I call this mint never read. This is some of the extras you could buy for your OxyPathor. There was a throat piece, okay, for diseases of the throat and neck. There was a nasal attachment. There was a device for the eyes for optical diseases. Plate that went on the spinal column for diseases of the back. And then the two, I'm not quite sure how they were used. One is described as the OxyPathor female sound and the OxyPathor male sound. I'm not sure how they got the sound part into this, but there was a special device for women and a special device for men. You can see $2 each for the device. The other thing about these, if you read the text on the female one, it knows for treatments of ailments, particularly to women where inflation, pain, or weakness exists. With this attachment, oxidation is brought directly to the diseased surfaces. Often, and this will come up big in a little bit, oxidation and oxygenation are confused. Oxygenation is what you do when you go to the hospital and they put you on an oxygen breathing device. You boost your oxygen level in the blood. There's no oxidation due to it. Of course, oxidation is a chemical reaction, and if you injected yourself with bleach, you would promulgate oxidation and a lot of medical trouble for yourself. Here are some of the miscellaneous OxyPathor items in my collection. A child's mirror for your dolls and dollhouse, a sewing kit for the ladies. My can of antiseptic OxyPathor powder is still full, but I'm afraid to take any of the powder out for fear of asbestos. There was also an OxyPathor shaving cream. What about the OxyPathor company? They did not sell individual units from the home office in Buffalo except locally, okay? They established franchise offices throughout the US, Canada, and around the world. They sold and shipped quantities of the units to local branches for the personal touch in selling them locally with, someone who's a business person in your town. The franchise offices were the key to Moses' marketing scheme. Ship in bulk and sell locally. And I did a Library of Congress search on the OxyPathor for 1911 to 12, just that one year, and I found 182 ads in US newspapers. So advertising was pretty popular stuff. This is the Raleigh, North Carolina franchise that happens to be on eBay. You can see it was a small store at the left, and inside they had 4 employees and loads of things to sell in the cabinetry. And at the lower right, they took a booth at the North Carolina State Fair in 1913, and they were marketing all their OxyPathor devices and equipment. This is how it was done. Ads were placed in all sorts of vehicles. This is from a journal for builders and architects and engineers. An old fight, but a new weapon. nervousness, rheumatism, appendicitis, catarrh. And this is the Northern OxyPathor Company in Elyria, Ohio, which is almost a suburb of Cleveland. Uh, but they could do this. They could put these branch offices, these franchised, near other offices. I mean, these were like local businesses. Here's an advertising booklet from the Victoria, British Columbia franchise. You can see they're selling it at, it costs no more than in Buffalo, London, or elsewhere. Okay. Here's an ad from a Portland newspaper. Uh, Get well and keep well without drugs with the OxyPathor. And of course, you show a young lady being treated, and the lower third are testimonials. Okay. And this is from the Portland Pacific Coast OxyPathor franchise. They also put out a series of a dozen blotters, and you could collect these as an aside. And here's one that shows the home of Washington Irving. And they note here branches in every nation on earth, over 300 branches in America alone. That was serious franchising. And here's the home of Ralph Waldo Emerson. So these are two blotters that are part of the ephemera in the collection. Business card from the manager of the Rochester, New York branch. A message was left. He called at someone's house to make a sale, and note of this was made, and he left his card, and somehow it made it to eBay. The trademark had to be registered in all the foreign countries where it was sold. And I was fortunate enough to get the trademark registration papers for the country of Peru. And you can see the top cover. It's a 4-page document. Don't quite make philately. It's a revenue stamp. It costs 2 sols to register this trademark. Was done at the New York consulate, and you can see on the last page they do mention the OxyPathor company up here, and then we have all the legal work down here. Here's an interesting thing. It's an advertising postcard. When you bought an OxyPathor and its treatment, some of the purchasers were sent this card, asked to fill out the card with the names, addresses, and diseases of your friends, 6 of your friends, who could be solicited by the local OxyPathor company. And this was a solicitation that was done in the Japanese market in Kobe, Japan. Very nice postcard, properly franked. And I haven't read the Japanese, but presumably these are the names, addresses, and ailments. Very interesting way of increasing marketing. Here's a booklet, okay, four panes of the new Belgian King 10 centime stamps from Antwerp, advertising the OxyPathor. You notice rheumatism, nervous affectations, paralyses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And above that, it says a radical treatment via oxidation of the blood. They got it wrong there, okay? As I said, if you oxidize the blood, you'd probably kill the patient. But it's a very rare booklet in Belgium collecting, and one of the highlights.
I suppose
So
the company could simply pay the government for placing this ad, right?
somebody at the Buffalo OxyPathor office, or maybe one of the franchises actually in Antwerp, did the arrangements with the post office to get this ad on the bottom. You can
Hmm.
see the other ad is from La Cosmos. It looks like some sort of insurance company.
Yeah.
So what about covers? Okay, OxyPathor covers are extremely limited. Moses did not deal with tens of thousands of clients individually, as did Segno or the New York Institute of Science guys. He established 300 franchises in the US and 150 in foreign countries. Think about that, 450 franchises around the world. And the correspondence mostly went to and from the franchisees, except for the Buffalo and local areas in the United States where you see a little bit of local mail. Moses had no program to bundle correspondence and sell it to the philatelic trade, so the postal history you see is only by chance. I did get something relating to the establishment of the franchises. I've got this ad on eBay. Representatives sought registered trademark OxyPathy for the German market, okay? And of course, you write to the United States, and it tells the wonders of oxygen in curing diseases. And at the right, you have a regular overseas letter from Brazil, 200 rice postage from a small office in Brazil to the area of the OxyPathor company where for representatives, for franchises. Okay, somebody in Brazil was interested in establishing a franchise. Here's an advertising postcard from the United States at the 1 penny rate, addressed to the Santa Barbara Oxygenator Company. And the nice thing about this is the picture on the back. There's a very, very attractive young lady taking her OxyPathor treatment in the confines of her home. And you can see how easy it is. You see the little bowl holding the OxyPathor and the two electrodes, one on a wrist, one on an ankle. Here's again one of the really better covers in the group. It's from the Buffalo office, the home office, addressed to a client in Syracuse. But what really makes it nice is this stamp. It's not just the regular 2 cent Washington. It's a coil. Okay, you see it just perforated horizontally. Uh, and the letter is underpaid, okay? It reached the second weight level, so it's a penny short. It should have been franked at 3 cents, so it got a 2 cents postage due. And I pried this from Greg Schouts. Greg is the premier collector of the Washington Franklin's coil stamps, and at the bottom is the one from the Paducah OxyPathor branch in Kentucky, addressed locally to Bowling Green. You see the OxyPathor logo, but it's been printed in silver ink and is hard to see. Here's an envelope made to look like a letter card that the OxyPathor used for correspondence from the Buffalo office at the proper 2 cent rate. And here are some covers from around the world. Okay, up at the top you have Chile. Then to the right, Guatemala. The images here that was done at the home office. They would prepare your advertising if you wanted. This is the Guatemala example. You can now see the OxyPathor logo. It's our Liberty figure, Colombia. From the pictures, she's holding a torch pointing to the heavens. I don't know why they chose silver ink to do this in, because it's not a good, very, very visible shade. Spain, Seville, then you have Uruguay. You can see the franchisee in Uruguay did his own advertising. And then this is the most amazing envelope on this sheet. It's from the Moscow Oxy franchise office, OxyPathor office. It's lost the stamp, it's torn, and judges have given me grief on that and said I should get another one, but of course there is no other one. It's from the Moscow branch, and interestingly, at this time in Moscow, which was 1912, foreign organizations had rented space in commercial buildings in Moscow that were very tightly controlled and watched. And this envelope came from that business building in Moscow. Here's this one proved kind of interesting. It's Chile to a Canadian office located just across the Niagara River. Apparently, there was an OxyPathor office in the town of Bridgeburg, within 20 miles of the main office at Buffalo. And my guess is probably this office facilitated some of the international business of the OxyPathor company, particularly with regard to financial and customs matters, and particularly within the overall British Empire. I think it just maybe reflects Moses' attention to detail and marketing. Here's one. I really enjoy this cover. It's from the Las Palmas Canary Islands OxyPathor branch. Think about that. How big are the Canary Islands? You know, they're little tiny dots, okay? As big as some of Alan's Greek islands, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and yet they had an OxyPathor branch in the Canary Islands. Again, you can't see the Columbia figure, but if you do a little image manipulating, the figure comes up very well. And of course, you can see the address now, Canary Islands, Las Palmas, Gran Canaria. This is one from Caracas, Venezuela. Again, the local merchant prepared his own advertising and envelopes, et cetera, et cetera. Registered to the home office in Buffalo. He was buying more OxyPathors and OxyPathor equipment from Moses. Here's the back of the envelope. You can see the New York Transit on the way up to Buffalo, a special seal made by the local franchisee for sealing the letters. And the close up, we have a young lad, looks like he's about maybe 5, 6, or 7, taking his OxyPathor treatment while reading some sort of children's magazine. Maybe he's coloring something in place. But anyway, a very, very nice advertising card for a device that did unfortunately nothing. Here's one that's a little out of date and maybe suggests they was continuing to sell. Well, this first off is just an amazing cover. It's from the Russian office in Harbin, Manchuria. Does anybody know about the city of Harbin, Manchuria? That was established by Western commercial interests to have an entree to China and a connection to Europe. Okay. Harbin was connected via the Trans-Siberian Railway to Moscow and Europe, all of Europe, uh, and all sorts of businesses located in Harbin.
Didn't
Uh,
now wasn't Harbin, didn't it become part of Manchukuo, the
may, may,
Japanese uh,
maybe, yeah.
protectorate?
It did.
Yes, I believe. I mean, I had a small collection of postcards showing a fabulous railroad line
Ah,
that the Japanese built
oh,
during
okay.
their tenure in Manchukuo. And one of them, I mean, Harbin was one of the major terminals of this railway system.
At one point, they had 12 large Christian churches to represent, the Catholics and Protestants in Harbin. It was a booming commercial area that had post offices of Russia, the United States, Austria, Germany, England, and I think France in operation. And lo and behold, they had an OxyPathor office in Harbin, Manchuria. And here's a letter from the OxyPathor office in Harbin, Manchuria at the 20 kopeck rate, double weight letter. Here, this is a Russian censor marking because you can see here, this is 1915. Okay, so it's during World War I, and this envelope to Glasgow had to cross all of Russia to get to Europe. Here's another. I think that's St. Petersburg. I better be careful. It's all written here. Another sensor marking, and these are the details on all the sensor markings. I'm not going to get into them right now, other than to say this is a pretty neat cover. Well, it doesn't end here, though. This is the amazing thing. As I went around giving my lectures on this, of course, I ran into Wade Sadi. Maybe some of you know Wade. Wade was president of everything, the ACS, New York 16, and a number of other things. He collects the parcel post postage dues used on cover. And what he has in his collection is also a cover from Harbin Manchuria Russian office, where somebody attempted to use Chinese stamps, 10 cents worth of Chinese stamps, which is the correct rate, but the Chinese stamps were not valid from the Russian office. So you see the crayon highlighting of the stamps indicating they're not valid for mail. There's no hand stamp on it to indicate such. And when you see it's from the OxyPathor office to the Cosmopolitan Correspondence Club in Milwaukee, you see a bit of correspondence to them. And it's an OxyPathor cover, also from 1915. Okay, and when it got to New York, the Hudson Terminal, it got that binocular hand stamp due 10 cents. Okay. Oh, I take that back. That's 1914. It's the date is the 15th. So this one is within the OxyPathor normal years of usage. It's just the one I showed. That's after. But you can see it's the OxyPathor franchise. And when it got to Milwaukee, they put on the 10 cent parcel postage due stamp on it. Again, making that a fantastic cover from Harbin. I think that's up for sale right now, or was just up for sale. Wade is selling his postage due collection, or has sold it.
The parcel post? Was this part
Well,
of a package?
yeah, the government had this idea of issuing special stamps, U.S. stamps for parcel post and parcel post postage due. The red ones are for parcel post, and the green ones are for parcel post postage due. And what happens, of course, it was a total flop. It meant that post offices had to keep a double set of stamps, not only the regular stamps and regular commemoratives, but they also had to have these specialized postage due stamps. Why not just use regular postage due stamps? Why fool around with this? And the government realized that, so they put the kibosh on these stamps and said, let's just use them up as regular postage.
Ah,
People collect the red postage due, red parcel post stamps used on regular letters, and
hmm.
Wade and a few other people collect the postage due stamps. It's a
Okay.
very short period of use. It's very rare, and there's some serious validity issues, fraud issues on the covers, where people have stuck pen canceled postage due stamps on them. You could say that may have happened here, but I doubt it.
Well, it's
Uh,
not tied to the cover, that's for
no,
sure.
no, it's not. No, it's not. Of course, I had my background, my scientific background in the pharmaceutical industry. I worked for Merck and Company, and I participated on many project teams that were developing the programs for new drugs. And I worked with many MDs on these project teams, and I had a little look into how clinical studies are done. So I decided I would do my own clinical studies with some of my OxyPathor machines. And uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. Okay, here's Nick Lombardi right in the center, taking the OxyPathor treatment with the special one I have that not only has the two electrodes for wrists and ankles, but it has the forehead electrode. So I connected Nick up to my talk in 2014. And of course, being from a proper pharmaceutical background, I brought along Dr. Fred Scavera, who's at the left, who's monitoring Nick's vital signs. To our right is Dr. Marion Rollins. She's a well-noted psychologist in the area, and she was taking care of Nick's emotional needs during the course of the trial. You could see Nick looks a little concerned. Uh, I did make one mistake in this clinical trial. Unfortunately, Dr. Scavera is a pathologist. So the blood pressure of his clients is normally 0/0, and so he may have been a little confused. Nick certainly suffered no ill from my treatment. And then, of course, I got Jeff Boyarsky, president of the Hamilton Stamp Club, with Dr. Ron Gonzalez officiating, and you can see Jeff just looks, the testament of power from
Yeah,
his
he's all
OxyPath.
charged up.
He's all charged up. He's got that fist in the air. He's going to make his clients the richest people around town. He just has that attitude after his OxyPathor treatment. And also, I gave a lecture on Professor Segno and his success waves to the Akron Collectors Club, and I closed that lecture with a short discussion of the OxyPathor. And the members of the Akron Collectors Club, you can see first off they were concerned about residual success waves being present during my lecture. See, the fellow at the right is the president of the Akron Collectors Club, and he was actually hooked up to the Oxydonor. Unfortunately, when I travel and give this lecture, it's not a good idea to carry in your luggage a sealed chrome pipe with wires coming out of each side going to electrodes. So I have to mail them. So I mailed ahead of time the Oxydonor, Sanche's Oxydonor, and we hooked him up. You can see he looks pretty good too. So what happened to Mr. Moses? Mr. Moses was tried in late 1914 and sentenced to 18 months in Atlanta Federal, but allowed to keep all his monies, okay? And there's, unfortunately, I don't have a postcard sent by him, but I do have one from Atlanta Federal, and he only served 8 months. And he was let go on good behavior despite what he had been doing. And here's one of the Merrill OxyPathor franchise. It seems like a whole family was involved in that one. And here's a letter used in 1916. I doubt they were selling OxyPathors then. I think they were just using up their envelopes. And that's probably the most logical explanation. And then this one really surprised me. I now have a third different oxygen device in the collection, the Oxy Healer, and this one was actually made in Japan. And other than the postcard and this Oxy Healer, I have nothing else from the Japanese market on these, but obviously something does exist. In case you haven't gotten enough of this, just from my talk, there's a whole chapter in the American Philatelist 2023. I think it's about 14 or 15 pages, and it goes into a lot more of the detail. And when I give these lectures, I show this slide where I need your help, and I try and get people to look through their collections, look along the stocks of their dealers to find material for me. And there's all the stuff I'm looking for at the left. And that picture of me, I look a little younger. Actually, that was taken in Heidelberg by a 25-year-old Leica camera. And it made me look 10 years younger and 25 pounds lighter, way ahead of the Apple iPhone for its day. And these are some of the people, and I have a slide of fame that I show who've helped me. That's Art Sellengood, who got me the first 4 OxyPathor covers. These are the people who've really helped me build the collection independent of stuff I found myself. And you see there's a good spread of philatelists, a few from foreign area. Hank Slabinick is the one from Belgium who got me that booklet. As I said, it took them a while to get it. And if any of you guys find something for me, you get to get your name put on my slide of fame. Okay. And as a result of a talk before the France and Colonies group, a new member of that group, Ben Bump, went through some boxes from his father. His father was both a dealer and a collector in philately. And Ben found this Santa Lucia cover to Professor Segno at the proper 4.5-cent registered rate. Somebody was buying Success Waves, and so that came into the collection. And you can see Ben Bump at the bottom left as one of the latest additions to the cover. So how do I get out of this? Okay, the lecture's over. What final thought do I leave you with to think about? And I realized a long time ago, when you get into these life situations, who do you turn to? Anybody know? Who always has something to say about every life situation? Shakespeare. Lord, what fools these mortals be.